Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to get to this end result with your mandala design. Okay, so I'm not done tracing everything in marker yet, but um, I wanted to show you how I got here. Okay, so this was the sketch that I created. You guys are working on a slightly bigger triangle shape here, right? You're going to use a 90-degree section of the circle, a quarter of the circle. I did a sixth of the circle, okay? But the premise is the same. Where you create a design here, you use a line of reflection, and I folded my tracing paper in half along that line of reflection to get my design on both sides. So then I have that full 60-degree triangle. Okay. Then what I actually did was I traced it onto another sheet of tracing paper. This way I had my whole design. I had half of my design on a tracing paper. You don't need to do this though. You guys will have just the quarter of your circle and you'll be good to go. But that's what I did. And then I traced that onto my illustration board. Okay. So you can see this goes here, kind of see through that, right? And then it repeats all the way around that circle to create that design. Okay, so hopefully you're at the point where you've done some sketching. Like this was sort of a beach theme, so it's like, well, you know, do I want to do 2 fish or 1 fish in the section? And then you think, okay, well, if this is an eighth of the section of the circle, I'll actually have 8 fish swimming around in a circle. So it's really important that we plan out how that's going to work. And then using one of the templates to help you, the templates have these sections broken up. So these can help you figure out where you want to line up items, okay? So let's keep in mind that this line here, the thicker black line, is the absolute end of your composition. Do not draw anything beyond that line. All right. So once you've gone through the process of sketching and planning out ideas, maybe it's loose and rough like this, and you've got some basic ideas, but you know you want to include like a word here, but you're not sure what font you want to use. You want to print something out with text that's written in a pretty font. Okay. So you can leave that blank. You don't have to work that out just yet. All right. Here was another sketch that I had done with the students' ideas, you know, with like a hot air balloon and what that might look like when it's flipped and rotated or reflected. Okay, here was another good design that was sort of based off of another student's ideas. I was just demonstrating how things could work, but, you know, breaking up the mandala into different sections, using, instead of doing the cross shape in the center of this pie slice, just drawing half of it in the center there. Then when that flips over, you're going to have the exact same thing. So the goal is to work out all the details on this template, erase, move lines around. You know, it's okay if you decide you hate certain areas and you don't want to include them. Like maybe this is just a guideline, and I'm not going to include that in my final tracing. Okay. So once you've perfected the design on the 90-degree template, and now you guys don't have to do both sides. You can just draw on the 45, okay? Because I'm going to show you how to flip it. But if your design, you want your design to be bigger or include more things, then maybe you do want to do the whole full 90-degree circle, okay? So once your design is finalized here and you're happy with how that looks, you are going to get a piece of tracing paper. The tracing paper is that nice thin paper that's see-through in your sketchbook. Now, at this stage, it's really important that we are precise, okay? Because this corner is super important. Everything has to line up perfectly. If it doesn't line up perfectly, you're not going to end up with a perfect circle. So one thing you can do, as long as you're careful, is line the tracing paper up with the lines of the template. But the tracing paper is not always a perfect cut. Like it's not a perfect 90-degree cut. So you might have to play around with that. To play it safe, I would recommend you don't do that. and just line your tracing paper up with the corner of the paper. Okay, and my tracing paper is bigger than my template, right? So I'm gonna actually just flip it over because I need to tape it. Whenever you're tracing something, you wanna make sure you tape it so it doesn't move, okay? So I'm gonna just take a little piece of masking tape. You can use Scotch tape, any kind of tape you have at home. I just need 2 little pieces, okay? So now my tracing paper is taped to my final design, okay? Now you should get a nice sharp pencil. I'm actually going to use a marker so that you guys can see what I'm doing, okay? So I'm taking a nice skinny pen or marker, and you want to make sure that this doesn't move, okay? I'm going to use a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, anything that is got a nice straight edge, and I'm going to line it up perfectly with the guideline that's underneath my tracing paper. Okay, and you want to trace this. And take your time with it, okay? Because like I said, precision right now is super important. So I'm going to make sure that this lines up perfectly with the line underneath. Okay, so use a nice sharp pencil for that. And I'm going to also trace my reflection line. This will be helpful when I have to fold my tracing paper. I'm going to actually extend my reflection line all the way down here. Make sure it lines up perfectly. Okay, so that's my reflection line. That's when I'm going to fold my tracing paper. Okay, so I'm just going to draw this student's design. And what you want to do is trace everything that you want to remain in the final design. So if there's like a border line here that's just there for layout purposes, you don't want to include it, don't include it. Okay, so I'm going to quickly trace this and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so as you could probably tell from that, I did kind of wing it in some areas. I did grab a lid to something to trace for perfect circles. So if that's something you want to incorporate in your design, I definitely encourage you guys to trace something. So for example, let's say this is your design and you can try to eyeball it and make sure that that's kind of centered, and then, you know, just trace whatever circle shape you want there. Okay, you can also measure things too to line them up. So these guidelines will help you do that. Okay, so let's pretend I'm happy with this. I mean, I did that quite quickly. It's kind of sloppy, but it'll work for demonstration purposes. I'm actually going to draw another little shape here for fun. Okay, so now that I'm done tracing my final design, I'm ready to move on to the next step. I'm actually gonna, well, I should have done something to create a border here first. So I'll just do lines. All right. Okay. So now we very carefully need to fold this guy in half along that reflection line. Helps if you take the ruler and line the ruler up. So I flipped over my paper, right? This is the side I drew on. So I'm going to put that down. And then I'm going to line my ruler up with that line of reflection I drew. I'm going to make sure it's perfectly on there. And then I'm just going to pick up my paper and run my finger underneath and kind of force it to be creased along that edge. And now I have a crease, and now it will be much easier to fold where I need it to be folded. Okay, so then just finish up that crease. Now we have the design showing through to the other side, and all we have to do is trace it again. So I'm going to do that really quickly. Okay, so now that I've completed tracing it on the second half, I now have my completed design. Okay, And you can see what happens now. Like these started off as triangles. Now we end up with a diamond. Okay. I didn't really think this through, but there should be something sort of acting as a border here. So I'm just going to block that in really quickly. Okay. So now, like when we trace this, okay, this is going to end up creating a reflection, and you're going to have like sort of this like oval shape on this side. Okay, so this is going to be the piece that you will trace onto your final illustration board. You're going to trace it this way. Then you're going to flip it over, trace it this way. Then you're going to flip it over again. Okay, trace it this way. And then flip it again. And then everything should line up perfectly, and you'll end up with that perfect circle with a perfectly symmetrical design going all throughout your piece. Okay, so that is how to get your final piece of tracing paper set up. Okay, and then this is what we transfer to the final surface. For those of you that are interested in tracing letters, okay, I urge you to use the internet to find an interesting font. We have defont.com that we can use, and you could download or screenshot the letters, like the word that you want written in the letters that you want, print that out just like I've done here. And then once you have your basic design laid out, but you wanted text here, you would just put this underneath and then trace in your text and then move on from there. Okay, and the same goes for any of you that wanted to incorporate actual photographs of any kind of an animal or anything like that. It would be the same process, like where you sketch out on your template the different elements you want to include, and then you say, okay, this is going to be where the owl is or whatever, and then leave it blank. Get the rest of your design on the tracing paper, slide the photo of the owl underneath the tracing paper, and trace him wherever you want him to go. Okay, so the goal is to have a design approved by me, and then get that design onto a piece of carefully traced and folded tracing paper. So this is the next major step. So it's getting from the sketches and the planning to perfecting the design, and then tracing the design to get a full quarter circle onto tracing paper. And again, tracing paper is the smooth, really thin paper in your supplies. Okay, thanks for watching.